Hey Debs, what's going on? How you doing?
Hello, MrNJersey. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good, thanks. So we have some questions from the community that we are going to be having a look at today. Obviously, community have got quite a few questions, and yeah, looking forward to getting those questions communicated over to you and getting some answers and kind of seeing where Stormworks is heading in the future. Obviously, it's been a really exciting time. Version 1's been released a few months ago. So many more features, so many more things added, and even now with modular engines coming onto Experiment Branch, very exciting times here in Stormworks. And of course, all the players have tons of questions for you. So we're going to be going through some of them. We've got quite a few here, a lot of repeat questions, but obviously there are some very big topics that people want answers for and are interested in. So we're going to go ahead through that. We're also going to be doing a cool mission. We got one of Carnival's new helicopters, and we've got some missions here in Stormworks, so we're going to go ahead and do that too. Cool. Okay, so let's get up in the helicopter. Let's get going. The first question that I see here is a question about when are we going to get new pipe pieces, specifically the three-way corner pipe. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, from beginner there. He's got that in early.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Christmas could come early for beginner, maybe. We'll see. It's an easy one. I've got my notebook in front of me, so I'm going to kind of note this stuff down. Three-way corner pipe. How long is that going to take us? It's just it's been on the card. I think I got a note though. The three-way corner pipe's not the only pipe that's missing, is it? So we've kind of got to add the full set. So I mean, we've got most of them already, but the three-way corner one is the one that keeps getting asked for. But I know if we add that one, there's going to be a few others which are missing. So I kind of got to go through it. But there's maybe 3 missing, so I'll write that one down.
Cool. So you think that's something that will be added in terms of pipes?
Oh yeah, it definitely should be part of the game. I mean, we've got two-thirds the set of pipes. I think we should have the full set, and it's simple enough for us to do, and it's just a piece of content that's easy enough.
Fantastic. Great. Okay, moving on to the next one, and something that's obviously very high in demand in terms of the community is custom windows. What are your, firstly, obviously, what are your thoughts on adding more window blocks versus having some way to have fully customizable windows here in game? Obviously, the community and even myself, a lot of the time what we do is we modify the current blocks we have in game using the XML files. However, that isn't always the best solution because obviously it's not sealable and it doesn't always look the best and so on and so forth. So what do you think about this? Do you think that there is a possibility of either one, getting new window blocks, or two, getting some way or some form of some type of block where we can have our own customizable ones and kind of create whatever types of windows that we want here in Stormworks?
Well, I mean, adding more window blocks is like a really easy minor update for us to do. It is just making the 3D models and then rigging the surface data. I think the issue with the window update is we've done one before, and we got in a bit of trouble because like there were a lot of really useful windows in there, but then some players said, "Oh, but there's the one window that's missing. That's my window. Why didn't you do that one?" So we kind of got a lot of like mixed feedback on that. We're like, "Oh, do we do another Windows update? Because can we make players happy with just adding some new windows? Because we do. There's so many different window shapes and panels that we could do. It's going to take a lot of thinking to figure out, well, what is the most complete set that we can effectively do without having to potentially have like a set of 500 different windows. The alternative to that, there's a really popular issue on the issues board. I think Beginner posted it about 2.5 years ago maybe, and that's the Windows tool where you're painting windows on. It's a great idea, but it's not really Stormworks. It's not really a block building mechanic. It's kind of a painting windows on. It's obviously you're turning a block into a window at that point. It's just a bit weird, or you've kind of got some, I guess in the programming sense you'd call it a marching cubes algorithm where you're placing window blocks that then get merged together somehow. And again, that's quite tool based, so that would be a bigger feature. and it's would make all the existing windows redundant and so on. So I'm not sure about that one. I think the other problem we've got is the wedges. When we added the 2 slope and the 4 slope wedge pieces and the pyramid pieces, we were kind of in two minds whether to actually go ahead with that update or not, because we'd looked at it and they worked for physics and they worked for graphics, but the buoyancy systems, the water data is a slightly different shape to the actual shape of the wedges, and they didn't quite fit. Didn't quite work with the existing buoyancy system. So it's like, oh, do we go ahead with this or not? And generally the consensus was, yeah, that's you can't really tell. The buoyancy system doesn't match perfectly, but the graphics change was just, it's been such a massive upgrade. But now players are also saying, where are our 4 wedge and our 2 wedge windows, and that's a big problem. For water would start kind of clipping through the surfaces and stuff, and we don't want to get to that situation where we're adding these 2 gradient or 4 gradient windows and then finding that the players are saying, okay, but it's introduced new issues that need to be fixed. It just becomes a bigger target. But can we add more windows? Definitely can. I think that the top one is the one you keep doing the XML modding for, which is the square window, which you then kind of make into a diamond, an angled diamond, and that seems to be a really popular demanded one. I think we would like to do another Windows update and roll some out, but we do want to do it properly as well. It wants to be a high quality thing.
Yeah, of course, and obviously not have that snowball effect where we get more features or more parts, we get more issues, more bugs, and then we get, what I mean? It's not like we don't want that to happen. We want them to come and then we want them to work at the same time.
Exactly, and you've got the XML modded windows, and so you want something that's better than that. You don't want just that, but as a button in the game, you want it to be better than that, because you've already got XML modded windows. You don't need that again.
Yeah, correct. What are your thoughts then on possibly, like, at the moment we have specific windows that are based for ships, for example, like the porthole windows. Would you think maybe that instead of obviously going down the route of 1,000 different pieces of windows that fit everyone's needs, or having a special tool that goes and calculates it and goes and paints it on and so on and so forth, maybe having specific windows for different types of vehicles and that we would usually expect to see in Stormworks, like having specific windows for a helicopter, or having specific windows for a car, or having specific windows for a jet, or so on and so forth? Do you think that could possibly be a different way of maybe doing it?
Yes. I mean, we kind of want to keep the windows. I mean, the magic of Stormworks is that you're using the same blocks for various different applications, and it works. So I think it would be great to start adding windows that solved the problems where you're struggling to make your plane or your helicopter or your jet aircraft cockpits. And I think it is generally the cockpits kind of problems. I think the ship portholes, people aren't really asking for more ship portholes, I don't think. I think they're asking for the cockpit windows and stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff for helicopters and jets, and maybe something for cars, because at the moment, the only kind of, I think, just speaking on behalf of the community, I think the only windows you have for a car would be a 3x3, and you either have an angled one or a straight one, which doesn't really fit into most cars, to be fair, unless you want to put a few of them in, or so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I agree. I think, and the XML modding is obviously not great because it stretches the frame as well. So I think there's definitely windows there. I think I will just then point out, this is probably something that's going to come up again with other questions, is that yes, we're happy to do more windows, but I think if players do have strong feelings about which windows, we just need to know the absolute specifics, because we want to add the right windows. If you ask for more windows and then we add more windows and it's the wrong windows, well, it's everyone's fault, isn't it? It's not necessarily, if we don't understand which windows being asked for, it's more difficult for us to add the feature that players want.
No, 100% agree, and it could possibly even go to maybe a point where this is something that goes on experimental, feedback gets given, and so on and so forth, or maybe possibly some preview list of items gets released or discussed, and then community feedback comes back to that to get the ideal ones. But yes, I kind of understand the point where you're coming from, is that if you add something, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, as we would say, and everyone's going to have their own ideas, saying, oh, this is not right, this is not what I wanted, whereas other people are going to be like, yes, this is what we do want. And I kind of understand where you're coming from, saying, well, these are the windows, this is how the game works, that's it, unfortunately. So yeah, it's a little bit of a tough one, to be fair. Cool. Let's go on to another highly asked for question. Is how much is the weapon DLC going to cost?
I knew it would be that one. The answer is, I actually don't know. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's going to be comparable to what you'd normally expect to pay for a DLC of a similar game. I don't.
Well, you look at some games, and the DLC prices are like double the price of the regular base game.
Well,
I think that's the rare occasion. I think that's the rare occasion. But
so it's going to be, single-digit dollars. It's going to be certainly less than $10. I think a lot less than that.
So that's fine. I think that's fine.
Be.
So less than $10. I don't think anyone's going to have an issue paying that, to be fair. I definitely wouldn't. I think I bought the game how many years ago, and it didn't start off as that much in any case. So paying a little bit more for another feature is not a big issue for me. I don't think it will be for a lot of other people either. The price of the game at the moment isn't even that high. If you compare it to other AAA games or even other smaller games, to be fair. And the amount of hours that you see the community put into this game, you're definitely getting your money back. I have over 2,000-3,000 hours in game. I've definitely got my £15 out of the game. So I don't know. I think every single other person in the community has exactly the same thought as me. Even if you bought the game, let's say a month ago, and you paid $25 or £25 for it. Even if you spend 25 hours in the game, that's still £1 or $1 an hour, which is still a better return on investment than a lot of the things that you do for entertainment reasons.
Well, the average, I looked last night, the average playtime, because Steam has a console which tells you, what the average is and anonymized data is. And the average is 76 hours at the moment, I think. So the average player has spent 76 hours, which is, phenomenal. Like, that is very, very, very high for any Steam game. But I mean, I think with the weapons DLC, we want to make sure it is good value for players. And I think if it was just a few weapons components, then it would be a couple of dollars or something like that. I think it just depends on just how meaningful it is, and how much content we do, because we're still not decided of exactly what the final feature set of the weapons DLC is going to be. Is it just going to be the canon weapons, or are we going to then take it further? Are we going to add first person items? Are we going to add like an AI or mission component? And as it starts to come together, I think it'll be a lot easier for us to start. So we will keep everyone updated, and when we know, we will announce it. We're not gonna sit on that information. Once we know, and we should be quite transparent about how things are developing with the weapons and stuff as well. So I think we've still got a little bit of time left, and I think we do want to work more on the weapons update. We're not there yet. We think it can be better, but we'll just carry on adding stuff and making the update better for everybody. And then hopefully once we get there, it'll be really clear that it's this substantial an update. So it would be this, but it's certainly not going to exceed $10. I would like to get it to kind of the $5, $6, $7 worth of value point, but we're not there yet. It has to be a really good update to get to that kind of cost, I think. Yeah,
and I 100% agree. And I think as you posted earlier this week with the announcement with the roadmap, you're looking at what summer next year, possibly, with the weapons DLC, or later next year, correct?
Yeah, I think we said mid 2021, didn't we? So it's kind of going to be those middle 3 months. So May, June, July, August, somewhere around there.
Yeah, which is not too far out. So, and I can imagine that you guys have probably still got quite a lot of work to get done with with the weapons updates, and obviously I'm guessing your focus is probably on current things that we are getting in game before the majority of the focus goes onto that. So yeah, and you guys have been really good with communicating obviously announcements and what is coming in the game in terms of experimental and so on and so forth. So I'm sure we are going to see more updates from you guys within the Steam announcements and so on.
Yeah, I think as we start getting a bit closer, we'll obviously be talking about it a lot. And obviously, it doesn't happen all at once. Like, we do some artwork and then program some features, and then we review it and we look at it and we'll work a bit more on stuff. And as we go along as well, we'll add one feature and then we'll be like, oh, wow, okay, now we can see that in game. It's really obvious that this other feature would work really, really well with that. And you just get excited, don't you? And you kind of start to be like, oh, how good could this be? And start adding more stuff. So we'll see as stuff gets developed. We'll talk about it a lot more, and I think we don't even know exactly what those major updates, the order of the major updates, is going to be yet. But we kind of put that in the image that we did, the infographic, and I think that's still subject to change. We're still looking at players' feedback, but I mean, that is stuff that we're very much thinking that is going to happen in 2021, and we'll just step through it and stuff will go on experimental and so on, and we'll get players' feedback going in, which has been really cool. I think the experimental branch has been working really, really well in terms of just being able to engage players and make everyone aware of what's going on, and it's less of a surprise as stuff releases, which I think is a great thing, and it's really fun just interacting with players in a different way as well.
Yeah, great. So let's move on to another very obviously big question here in Stormworks is optimization and bugs. And obviously this is a very controversial topic. A lot of players are asking for more features, but then a lot of other players are also asking for more improvements to current existing issues or bugs in game. So where do you stand there? Obviously I know there are limitations to the current engine of Stormworks, but what do you see things that you guys are possibly currently working on or are going to be looking at versus what issues we currently know we have in game, which unfortunately just is the game and the engine limitations there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'll answer that in two parts, and we'll do bugs and we'll do optimization. So I think with the bug stuff, we are very proud of Stormworks, and if the stuff we can fix, we're going to fix it. It's going to be fixed. I think the issue with this typical question, because I've seen it in the questions list quite a lot, and people just refer to them as bugs, and no one specifically says which the issue is, or are we going to dedicate updates to bugs. We're obviously fixing bugs several times a week on experimental. We're updating probably about on average 2 or 3 times a week on experimental branch, where we fix bugs in every one of those updates, and then obviously they go onto the main line on the main branch every 2 weeks as a minor update, and in every single one of those, bugs get addressed and they get fixed. So obviously we are fixing bugs all the time. I don't think it's necessary for us to dedicate an update to bugs in order to fix bugs and fix the issues with the game. We are already committing a lot of time, probably more than half the time, to addressing issues within the game and improving the quality in terms of any bugs or defects. So I mean, we're happy to say this week we haven't done any new features, but here's the bug releases. I mean, that's fine, but I don't think us doing a small feature that's only taken half a day or a day is necessarily detrimental to, it's not necessarily taking time, or it's not taking a significant amount of time away from the usual fixing and improvements quality that we're doing. The thing I would really, really, really stress, though, is that we need to know exactly what bug you're talking about, because if people who are saying, well, when are you going to fix bugs, or when are you going to fix issues, we actually don't necessarily know which issues you're talking about. And even though it might be obvious to you, everyone plays Stormworks in a different way. So an issue that you might be encountering, well, 90% of players might never actually encounter, because they play Stormworks in this other way that doesn't interact with that particular feature that is a focus for you. So I'd really stress that if players can just let us know specifically about what the actual bug that they're referring to is, that is very, very helpful. For extra points, reproduction steps. If we can reproduce a bug, we can fix it. And so, if we can easily reproduce a bug, we can fix it very, very quickly, very efficiently, and it's within any player's ability to get their bugs fixed very quickly if they just let us know what we need to do in order to discover that bug. And once we've done that, it's very easy for us to resolve. So yeah, we're going to carry on fixing the bugs,
and that kind of
that stuff.
And that kind of Sorry, Karen.
I was just going to say, I think the thing with experimental, there will be bugs on experimental, but the whole idea is that we are testing stuff and we're now filtering things through a lot more before they get onto the main line, so that the stable version is a lot more stable and there are less bugs going through, so there ends up being less things on stable branch for us to fix. So that stuff's gone a lot better, and I think we've seen a big improvement in the quality of the game since version 1 with the help of the experimental branch, of just slowing that down and implementing that process of stepping things from being developer tested to being our own QA tested to being player tested, and then to obviously go on to stable and being mass tested.
Yeah, and that kind of brings into another question that came up in the questions that you guys hosted was, are there going to be any improvements to the issue tracker? Is that something you guys are looking at improving? Maybe the speed or the searchability of issues or the visibility of those issues? Is there going to be any change or improvement to that to better obviously say, okay, these are, let's say, the top 10 bugs of the month. These are the ones that we're working on, and we expect to get them done within 1 week, 1 month, etc. And then once we answer that, I think we'll jump back onto obviously the optimization, game engine things later on.
Yeah, because I was about to say, I think we've just dodged optimization.
No. We'll don't worry. I think everyone will probably dislike this video if we skip that. No, we will get back to that. I think just let's just obviously while we're on the topic, let's have a chat about. Oops, I just pressed teleport by accident. I just teleported. I'm going to come back to you. Whoops.
Okay, we'll see if you can get back here.
Yeah.
So the issue tracker, we've been rebuilding the issue tracker. We've got an external party rebuilding the issue tracker, and that's been going on for months now. It does take time. It's we want a better issue tracker. So we're working on that. The current one, it's just got so slow. The database is just absolutely massive now, and obviously with all the images that people have inserted into it and stuff, it's a big database, and it's got a bit slow. So we're getting a web developer to develop us a new one. That's been going on for ages, and that should be hopefully a much more improved situation. In terms, and that's obviously where we kind of want to get to, is we just want to have a really good issue tracker that works well for players, that works well for us. And ideally, we wouldn't even be asking people's QA sessions. We'd just be, doing this video. We'd be like, hey, what's new on the issue tracker? What's the most viewed voted stuff on the issue tracker? And that would be, a better way, I think, for players and developers to interact and we'd be getting everything, because, the issue with this QA session is obviously that these questions could get forgotten. I'm noting some stuff down in my notebook now, but on the issue tracker, of course, you've got an ID, you've got an index, it's got your issue's got a status. We're able to reply, and we've got a thread that is specific to that specific issue, that is all on topic. So it's a much better way of organizing it. I think players prefer it. I think we'd prefer it. And obviously, if players could start to say, oh, I've got this issue, and that could be tracked through the issue tracker rather than necessarily bringing it up in a question. I think would be, better for everyone. I think if you could, the search function was good and you could search easily and stuff, I think that would be awesome. So that's the plan with the issue tracker, and hopefully that'll be able to get in there. I think these questions are obviously, not every question is an issue necessarily, and I think there's some great questions here. There's still a place for these question and answer sessions, but I think a lot of this stuff is obviously dealing with stuff that should have been dealt with on the issue tracker, and the issue tracker is just not really fit for purpose right now. So we will get
Yeah.
there. Are you going to be okay getting this helicopter? Do you want me to land
No,
it?
I'm fine. I'm inside now.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
I see.
I'm good.
Yep, made it back.
Yeah, somehow made it back. Died. I teleported. I did a few things. It's fine. Okay, so that's obviously looking at the issue tracker. So that's something that you guys are aware of, you are working on, and obviously that is going to be revamped or overhauled with a TBA coming soon. Sticker on it. Moving on to obviously probably number one question is optimization. We could talk probably hours about optimization and different questions that people have from this Q&A. I think the major ones, obviously taking my thoughts about it and also the communities and combining it, is let's talk a little bit about multi-threaded performance. Let's talk about multiplayer performance, and let's talk. Obviously, I know this is kind of going into this is also going into both of those, but obviously then talk about large vehicles and optimization there. I think those three things, I know they kind of all tie into each other. Well, not so much the multiplayer, but they do. But yeah, let's start by talking about that, see how far we get, and go from there, I think. I'm sure there'll be other things that are going to come up during that time period, but...
What is that boat to our
yeah,
left?
That's where we need to go to our mission, I think.
That's our mission. Fantastic. Okay, so sorry, we're doing optimization now?
Yeah.
So, the optimization stuff, it's a similar thing to the bugs issue. We just need to know what players' expectations are, I think, in terms of when you're dropping that question in there, because I think sometimes players ask this, and it's a case of, there being a legitimate optimization issue where there's a performance issue where you would expect the game to run better. I think there's other times when perhaps this question's being asked, but the player is perhaps playing on a machine that is below the minimum spec for the game, and it's perhaps a laptop from 5 years ago or something. And then there's the other issue where players are saying, well, when's the game going to be optimized, because I'm using edited workbench created vehicles, which are essentially created in a hacked version of the game, essentially, where we did limit the size of the workbench, and the main point of that really was to control file size, but also put some control on what can happen in terms of performance for the game. It's kind of difficult for us to take responsibility for all of that, and I think I'd kind of say cautiously that if it is a edited workbench vehicle that is huge and it's the Titanic or whatever, then obviously there is going to be a performance issue. The game isn't designed to be able to do that. I would love it if it could, but it's all got to be done in some priority, and that is a big project for us to be taking on in terms of developing the performance of the game to be able to handle these really big vehicles. And of course, anything's possible. It's software, everything could be done, but the huge vehicles, well, that is a big problem, and it's not necessarily one we've ever claimed to have solved, and it's certainly not something that is part of the official game as it comes out of the box. I think the other one with the below min spec computers, I think this is probably quite a common complaint, and I don't want to deflect it all. I don't want to say, the game's perfectly optimized and stuff. I think that there's obviously opportunity to do more, but we obviously have set a minimum spec, a certain specification, and if your computer doesn't meet the minimum spec, it's difficult for us to say, this is a priority, because obviously there's a lot of players who are going to be disserviced by us reducing the minimum spec for the game in order to service a very small proportion of players who have not taken attention of the minimum spec. I think a lot of the players with minimum spec machines or above are going to feel like we've let them down by spending a lot of time optimizing the game for a group of players who aren't them. So it's a difficult one. If players do have optimization concerns, just let us know, but let us know the specifics, and we'll certainly take that very seriously. if there are vehicles that you would expect to work at a better performance, then definitely let us know and let us have a look at the specific scenarios where the game performance isn't good enough. And if it's a valid optimization issue, we'd certainly want to solve that.
Yeah. Before we move on with some more questions about optimization, do you mind just winching these people that we're trying to rescue out of the water?
I can't talk and play at the same time. You
just have to go to the back, and there's a screen where you can do up and down on the left.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
Going up 17 meters, 16 meters.
And then while we're talking, if you can just take them out the seat and put them in the vehicle, and then I'll keep on loading them up.
Yes.
Cool. I think there's a few more of them inside. Okay. So that is optimization in terms of like large vehicles and obviously minimum spec. And if you have modded workbenches, don't expect performance to be great because you've modified your vehicle workbench. As you were saying, you've designed the game for a specific reason, and the workbench is for a specific size is because that's what the engine can handle. Or the game can handle itself. So modifying that is in theory going against it, and no wonder you're going to find issues. Moving on from that, what about, obviously another question was the multiplayer performance improvements, is that once you go into the realms of, let's say, 6 people or 10 people on a server and you spawn in, let's say, 10 creations, the game starts lagging quite a lot, or it crashes, or desync issues, and I think this I know it's not being specific, and I think this is the main issue, is that these are the things that a lot of players I think are having from obviously the questions that we're reading here, and people are saying multiplayer improvement, bug fixes, optimization, and so on and so forth. I think that all ties into it somehow. Is that just a limitation with the engine that it just can't handle all that, or is it in terms of like multi-threaded performance? Obviously we know that each core or each thread handles its own thing here in Stormworks, like physics and logic and things like that. Do you want to just go into a little more detail about that and kind of get a little background?
So obviously the 10 vehicles thing, the physics does run on a single thread. This is a normal thing. I know. I've heard a lot of players say, well, when are we going to get the multi-threaded physics? I mean, we do have, I guess, what I think a lot of games are calling multi-threaded physics, which is basically the physics isn't on the same thread as everything else. The software is multi-threaded. And I'm not convinced that there's any game that really is doing multi-threaded physics. With Stormworks, of course, our physics is more detailed than pretty much any other game. I think we've got the most detailed physics rigs in terms of, the blocks are quite small. It's all losslessly built into physics shapes. And there aren't any games with physics shapes that are quite so complex, that are dynamic shapes that can move around with the waves and get moved around and stuff.
Yeah.
So our physics problem is the biggest physics problem, I think, in video gaming. I don't think anyone else is doing physics that is so detailed a shape and so much like that. So when you get the multiplayer stuff, obviously you then start to spawn a lot more vehicles than you would in single player, because everyone wants to play on the server and wants to play on the boats and spawn their own vehicle. I don't know. I mean, we didn't really intend for multiplayer to be used in that way. It does start to get a bit tricky. Obviously, there are ways to solve this. We could look at saying, okay, well, let's split the physics world into multiple chunks, and we'll run the different chunks on different threads. That would obviously be an improvement. We're going to run out of seats here. I've got. We're going to have to stand some people up, I think.
That's fine. You can leave them. You could leave them inside the harness. I just need one harness for myself to come back up.
Right. I can't get people out of the harness and talk. Hang on.
That's fine.
Okay.
There's no rush. There's no rush.
Did someone just fall? No, they didn't fall out.
No.
I don't think there's enough standing room for someone. Have I put someone in the water? It's made the helicopter a bit unstable.
Just put them in the driver's seat, maybe in the pilot's seat for now. Until I'm back up in there, yeah.
So I was talking about multiplayer physics performance.
Yeah, sorry.
Obviously, it's suitable. It's possible.
Yeah.
I think I would just, point out that we're essentially going to have to invent multi-threaded physics, and we're going to have to invent a new kind of performance improvement for for physics in games before we're able to implement that feature. So it's a big ask. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to do. So that is because of the cost and the expense of it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that right now, to be honest. I'm going to say sorry, but I don't have an answer for that yet. I'm not saying I'm never going to be able to answer that question, but it's a big problem, and obviously it's not necessarily the kind of thing that's been solved before in video games. So
yeah,
you're on. I'll bring you up.
Yeah, well, it's something that I think, I think that's why this question has been asked so much, is that I think the community feels that they obviously are saying, like, we have this issue, and nothing's being done about it. But obviously I think going into this, like what we're doing right now, and obviously what you've said, giving some insight into it, and obviously talking behind the scenes of how it works, and kind of making it more realistic, as we should say. I think it gives the players a little more idea, like, okay, like, you need to be careful about this, because obviously if you go and spawn in 10 creations, the physics engine of the game just can't currently handle that. Or if you spend in like really complex creations with tons of lights and tons of logic and tons of lure and different blocks and all that kind of stuff, it is going to lag at the end of the day ever so slightly. And you guys are aware of it. You do know about it. But as you said, like, it's something that is known, and it's just something that you kind of have to reinvent the wheel, in theory, to get it to work better.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we added the extra kind of like player counts to the game, I think we weren't really expecting players to kind of go into a multiplayer. Oh no, do I need to drop the cable again?
No, I'll just teleport. It's fine.
Okay. We weren't expecting everyone to jump into a multiplayer game and then play it as if it was a single player game, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is, I think kind of what has ended up happening is that players join multiplayer quite often because we've improved the performance for clients now, where the clients aren't doing a lot of the physics calculations. So the actual what's going on?
I'm just reviving some people. Don't worry about me.
We just lost a load of altitude.
Yeah.
So the yeah, we're just surprised that players are jumping into multiplayer and then kind of saying, okay, I'm now going to go and spawn my own vehicle. I'm not going to play with other players. I'm not going to cooperate with other players, and we're not going to crew a vehicle together, or we're not going to crew a small number of vehicles together, but actually players just kind of go off and do their own thing. And I think that's a surprise to us. We didn't really expect players to then go and play in a single player kind of context in a multiplayer game. We thought players were going to go into multiplayer to interact more with other players.
Yeah, exactly. Like what we're doing now. Yeah, we're playing a mission, we're doing it. So I think exactly what you're saying is that I think from what you've designed it to be, in terms of what your vision was for multiplayer and so on and so forth, it's just different to what it ended up being once it got in the hands of players. I think in terms of hands of players, once they, for example, got dedicated servers, everyone thought, well, oh, cool, well, that means we're just going to have theoretically an open world game where everyone's going to be out with their own creations, they're going to be building by themselves, and they're going to be doing their own things with their own vehicles, and then every now and then we'll just interact with each other and see each other while we're playing in game. And that's not how you designed it, if I'm correct, Jar.
No, exactly, and I think it's meant for players to play together, and you can have a lot of players, and it doesn't have to be just one vehicle. You can have several vehicles, but I think when you start to say, and we're going to have 10 huge vehicles on land near the ocean that are complicated as well, where the physics is expensive, where there's a lot of multi-bodies to the vehicle, it gets expensive. But if we were to have 4 of this helicopter, for example, each with 2 or 3 players on, I think the game should be able to do that. I think it's when players are perhaps spawning large complex logs creations, for example, with a lot of multi-body parts on, and a lot of these vehicles, you go into the editor and they can have 100 different physics parts to them.
Yeah.
As opposed to this vehicle, which has probably got, I don't know, 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And it's of a limited size and complexity. And I think the multiplayer stuff does work in that context. Obviously, when you change the context, as many things with Stormworks, we haven't tried to control the bounds of what players can and can't do, but obviously it does mean then that it is possible to create situations where the game does start to struggle with performance. Whether you start to discover technical limitations if you try and push the game beyond the boundaries. And I would describe getting a multiplayer game with 10 vehicles in that are large and complex is certainly pushing the boundaries of what Stormworks is designed to do. So obviously the multiplayer does work. We're playing it now, but there are obviously contexts where it doesn't work very well, and that's such as having too many vehicles spawned, or some of these multiplayer servers are like the Wild West, where you join them and everyone's spawning stuff, and
and yeah, so that will come back to, once again, where the only way to really fix that is to hand off the physics on, split it, as you were saying, onto different threads. And as you were saying earlier, that's quite a big project, and not something that you could just maybe do tomorrow and flick a switch and it changes things. As you were saying, it's quite a big ask for that to change here in Stormworks.
Yeah, and I would say it is an ask in that the game was never really designed to or intended to be able to do that. We did obviously increase the player count, but within the context that players were going to kind of cooperate and crew vehicles together and play together and so on. And it's not necessarily what the game's intended to do. And it's not to say that we can't do that, but I think on the immediate sheet of features that we're planning on working on, that's a major upgrade for us to be looking at. There's so much stuff that we've added to Stormworks that we didn't think we were going to end up adding, and we never thought we were going to multi-thread the game in the first place, and we obviously have done several big performance updates in the past, so it's something that could happen. And especially just as time goes on as well, we are getting a lot better at building the game. We're learning a lot, and we're doing stuff now that we couldn't have done when we first released the game 3 years ago. So it could happen, but it's not on the cards for the 2020
current roadmap,
plan as it currently stands.
Yeah, cool, fantastic. I think that will answer a lot of the questions the community had, and I think that was also a mission that we've just gone and finished. So 6 people we rescued. Is there one more?
There we go. Is that the last one?
No, I think there's still one more.
Oh yeah, here we go.
There we go. Fantastic. That's the mission completed. Great.
Awesome.
I think we need to take this back to base and refuel. We've used
Yes,
quite a lot of fuel.
Yeah, we're in the air for a while, but it's a really nice creation.
Yeah, it is. Definitely. Okay, let's get in. Are you in?
Just about. Yeah,
cool.
I'm in.
Cool. Where should we refuel is the question. Guess we can go to TT helicopter base. Possibly. If I can find it.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? With the home icons on top of the islands, you're zooming in and zooming out all the time, aren't you?
I guess we could just go through to. Let's go to the harbor, and I just teleported. Just wait. I'm so easy to do that. Like I just right click, and I'm so quick to just clicking.
I found TT. It's not that far. It's about, I would say, 10 kilometers to our north by northwest.
Okay, cool. Do you wanna just set a waypoint and throw it into the GPS autopilot system?
Sure thing. I will do that now.
Well, I just lift ourselves off here.
Okay, that's programmed.
Cool. Nice. Okay, so yeah, let's carry on. We've got obviously quite a few more questions to get through. Obviously, these ones are going to be a little bit easier than the big money questions, as we would say.
Yeah.
So another one, obviously, this one's a little bit closer to my heart than some of the other ones, is mission screen. Obviously, pre-version 1, we had the mission screen, or the mission, should I rather say mission UI, clean, easy interface where we could click a few buttons and we could create a mission. And is there any plan for, obviously I know this can still be done using Lua, but is there any plan on bringing back a clean, easy to use interface that someone doesn't have to go and learn how to code in order to create a very simple mission like they could have done pre-version 1?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of this feedback. I think our concern is that we spent 2 years trying to get that mission system to work, and players were just not interested in it. And I think there was probably less than 5 players who were really uploading stuff, the mission content, to the workshop. It was a very, very unpopular feature. So that's why we revisited it, and that's why we're very interested in sorting that area of the game out, because we have made a vehicle editor which works really well, and you can look on the workshop. It's very possible to do really, really cool stuff, and we're really pleased with where the vehicle editor was, but a deficient area of the game was the career side of things, and that's something we really wanted to focus our energy on. And I'm not saying that we're gonna make it the best career system in the world, but it was very, very insufficient, and we wanted to sort that area of the game out so that there was just a better system in place.
Yeah.
And we were really struggling to get the mission stuff, and the players who were doing the mission stuff, it was hard work. While there was a UI in place, you didn't have to code. That didn't necessarily say it was any easier, because actually once you've placed everything, named stuff, added it to the right stage, typed your text in, and so on, it's a lot of work. It's very, very labor intensive to get that content in, and we were fairly dissatisfied with the actual process of building that stuff up as well. So we wanted a better system, and I think the issue is that we wanted to reimagine it. We didn't want to say, okay, well, let's try and adjust a system and tweak a system that we felt was just fundamentally not going to get there. It was just fundamentally not working. So we wanted to just make some fundamental improvement to the system, and that did involve reworking it from the ground up, which is a very difficult thing to do in Stormworks, because we're always very, very cautious of taking stuff out to replace it. Obviously, if that's not going to benefit a player, because they're going to end up with a system that kind of does a similar thing but isn't really backwards compatible, then that can be a very disappointing update to receive. So we're always very cautious about that stuff, but the mission system was such a big problem, it wasn't working, so we wanted to revisit it. We basically decided that the UI stuff was kind of fine if you just wanted to do a deliver A to location B mission, but if you wanted to do more than that, it just wasn't supported, and the UI was fixed, and you couldn't necessarily communicate the information that you wanted to the player. And it's in game development, that's a huge thing. There's one thing making the game mechanic, but if the player doesn't understand that mechanic, then it may as well not be there. So you need to have the information on the player, and restricting that to this kind of tab on the map was just not effective. We wanted to be able to have more information, and a lot of the information was spatial, so you'd want to have that represented either as a 3D tooltip or as a 2D position on a map, for example, where you want to represent that information in space. And so we wanted to rethink that, and to rethink it, we're saying, okay, well, let's get rid of the map tab. We can get all of that information on tooltips directly on the map, as if it was like a chart and a kind of like a battle terrain map kind of thing, and you can see what is going on, well, at what location. So we wanted to rethink that. We also wanted to do more. We didn't want it to just be deliver object A to position B missions anymore. We wanted to do more, and I think that the last thing, of course, is that we knew that making missions was very labor intensive. Players weren't doing it, and we were struggling to do it, so we wanted to have more control over being able to build that stuff up. So we started looking at these procedural solutions, and at that point you start to say, well, do we want 2 systems in the game that do the same thing, but one system's just not as good? Considering players weren't weren't making the content, they weren't producing the stuff, or at least they weren't producing to the point where they wanted to upload it onto the workshop.
Yeah.
We felt it was time to remove it. But what I will say is that we're not necessarily in a better position now, because players don't necessarily have the information they need to be able to start interacting with the new Lua systems. And the newer Lua systems, I mean, if you can do the microprocessors, you can certainly do the mission stuff. I think the thing is, it's a bit imposing, and a lot of the systems are in place that are actually really simple once you understand the concepts and the fundamentals. But until you've had that stuff explained to you, and we haven't explained that stuff yet, that it's really unclear as to what's going on. So I think something I want to do next is produce a series of videos, just short ones, where we just go over some of the really simple things you can do in Lua in the mission add-on system. I think we're going to rename missions to add-ons, because it's not really just missions anymore. It's more complicated than that. But we want to go and look at the add-on Lua system and just start to do some really simple videos, just to go over the basics and see if that gets us to the point where players are happy with the mission stuff. And hopefully there will be. If we can get to that point where players are more satisfied with that, then awesome. Otherwise, we'll have to carry on working. But we've been working on the mission stuff for 4 years. We've revisited it so many times. Hopefully we can get there. But I don't want to go backwards, because I think where we were was certainly not a good place, and it certainly wasn't good enough.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So in a summary, obviously, so you're going to be doing hopefully some videos going into a little more detail about it. And you're also obviously going to be doing some more things with missions. So is there any more changes coming to how missions work in Stormworks, or is that kind of how it is at the moment?
Are you talking about we're obviously looking at doing new mission types. We're looking at doing potentially new API. We're looking at building different add-ons for the game. Are you talking about in terms of changing the mission system again and fundamentally reworking the API, or is it
not really reworking the API? I think, just looking from the perspective of the person that asked the question, in terms of getting some type of UI back. Obviously, I know you said that to fix that issue, you're kind of saying, well, we're going to go into a little more detail about tutorials and so on and so forth. Do you think that you possibly might add some more AI, also UI, into it at a later stage, to make it a little bit more accessible to, let's say, the average person?
Well, we've certainly added AI on already
UI. Sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, so we've certainly added the UI on already, just to improve some stuff. Like, for example, when we released version 1, we'd kind of overlooked the fact that players wanted to use mission spawning missions. So we obviously added that button in the mission screen, so that you can just one click and you've loaded your mission in, which is potentially a much better UI for doing that, because obviously you can now put loads of different vehicles in a single mission pack or whatever, and it's a bit easier to arrange stuff, and obviously you know exactly what you're spawning in. So that's potentially a better way of doing mission spawners. So I'm not really too concerned about that side of things. In terms of actually building missions, I'm just going to question what players want to actually achieve and what they want to do, because I don't fully understand that right now. Yeah. So I think we're kind of going back to, please just be a little bit more specific and just explain exactly what you're trying to do. I feel like I know that the old system wasn't good and the players weren't using it for a reason. So if there's something the players want to do, then just let us know. And obviously, if the old system was a better way of doing it, then we need to look at that again. But
fair enough. Yeah,
we just need to know exactly what players are trying to do, and ultimately, if we want to add that UI in there to do a specific task.
Yeah, cool. Fantastic. Let's move on to the next thing. This is obviously, I think, something a lot of people asked and just wondered about. I don't think they really specifically want it in game or need it in game, but it's something I think that could add a little bit more, could flesh the game out a little bit more, and that's fishing. Do you ever foresee fishing coming to Stormworks? Obviously, I know Stormworks has always started off as a search and rescue themed game, obviously based up in Scotland, with Pacific role. But obviously, we've seen Stormworks develop so much in the last couple of years, from tank tracks to now coming soon with like modular engines, and eventually, natural disasters and weapons and so on and so forth. Do you foresee possibly Stormworks getting that mechanism, or that feature in game where you could go and do fishing, in theory?
I mean, why not? Like, what I love about this is that people are asking for it. Where like there are dedicated fishing games out there, but I think the thing about it is that players are like, yeah, but those fishing games, the ocean mechanics isn't quite so visceral.
Yeah, or you can't build your own vehicle to go and do the fishing, and I think that's the number one selling point for Stormworks, in my books at least.
I want to go and be a fishing tycoon and build my fishing fleet.
You build your vessel for that. It's the same as if you want to do a rescue mission, you build a helicopter, you build a plane, or you build a boat to do that mission. So I think people are looking for obviously more diversity here in terms of things to do in Stormworks. And obviously fishing is just one of those things that come about. It's kind of like a natural progression. We have boats, so why don't we have fishing?
Well, exactly. I think if we're doing steam engines, I mean, what aren't we doing at this point? But steam engines is a classic one that I kind of bring up, and it's like it's a search and rescue game. Why do they want steam engines? I don't understand. But actually, it's doing the modular engines and stuff. It's quite a fun thing to do. And then you go in the workshop and you see all these players who are building, ships and trains that would want a steam engine. So I think it's a good thing to add. But I think the other thing that is just in the back of my mind is that for the players who want fishing, there are players who aren't interested in fishing, and it can be in some ways a bit damaging for us to add a feature that is for a small section of the player base. Sometimes when a lot of players will question how we're prioritizing this stuff, because we've added the fishing and it's a search and rescue game. And I think that point of view is very reasonable, but then I also see, it could just be the best fishing game. It'd be great fun to be able to have, we added the transport mission in, and obviously that's not a search and rescue theme, but actually it can be really fun to have as a framework to start to build vehicles around. And I think that's something we're really interested in, is starting to create the point around the game of building stuff. And certainly, building your train network, your trains, and your rolling stock, and building your container ships and stuff is great fun. And us putting the transport missions in, where there's actually, you're getting paid for it, and there's just a framework of a game around there is very involving. So yes, but what kind of fishing do people want? A rod and tackle? Do they want fishing nets? Do they want lobster pots? I'm not entirely sure. Do they want to harpoon whales? I'm just.
I think
I'm
that.
not sure. So we just need a little bit more specifics in terms of what components you're asking for, what systems you're asking for.
And I think that also comes into another question, which came through during this Q&A, was, are you considering possibly having different types of game modes in Stormworks? So obviously at the moment we have career and we have survival, but would you consider possibly adding? We have a mission, by the way, to do, so you can jump in. Okay. But would you consider possibly adding different types of game modes that we could do here in Stormworks?
I mean, the answer is yes, but it's not really specific enough for me to respond to in detail. But yes, we're up for adding different types of game modes. I'm not sure what those game modes are.
Okay, fair enough. I think we're out of electricity.
Oh no!
I left the power on. We'll just get a new helicopter. I think that's the only route here. I should have turned it off.
Do we not have electricity on these refuelers?
No, we do not.
We should have added that.
We got an emergency parachute. That doesn't really help us. And
we don't even get out.
We can't even get out.
No, we used the last of the electric. We're on 0 because of the starter motor.
Yeah, it's fine. I think I can.
Where's the hand crank component?
I'll just teleport. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. I can just. The helicopter should be in the build area, so we should be able to.
fast travel to the tower.
Oh, well, the helicopter's in the build area. That's what I don't understand. Oh, you know why? Because I spawned in using a mission. That was my mistake. No wonder I couldn't bring it back to the workbench. I was wondering why. Let's go and spawn the helicopter in again. It's just over here.
Okay.
Cool, and we're going to do this mission. There we go. New helicopter, full of power, full of fuel. That was my bad. So yeah, so game modes. Going back, sorry, I know you answered that question, but let me just... sorry, I was trying to start the power. So yeah, so people were asking if there's any possibility of getting different game modes, kind of like a challenge mode, possibly. So obviously you know that I host a lot of challenges over on my channel and on my community server. Do you think that possibly could be something that you guys would like to bring into Stormworks, where maybe every month you had a new challenge in game, and it kind of be, or you would have like a set list of like, let's say 20 challenges to get a player from like first hour in Stormworks up to like their first 20 hours, so they could kind of like learn the game and challenge themselves. Or maybe after like your 50 hours of playing the game, or after 10 hours of playing the game, you unlock the challenges, and then you start saying like, okay, now you need to build the smallest possible, let's say, car with this limited amount of money, and within 1 hour or within 30 minutes or something like that. Do you think that type of game mode / challenges could be something cool or interesting that could come here in Stormworks in the future?
So I think it addresses a really the critical point we were just talking about before, which was the giving stuff for you to do with the vehicles. You know, the vehicle editing is awesome, but just giving you a reason to designing vehicles, or more of a reason to design vehicles, is I think a very, very compelling way of building up the game design. The challenger stuff's awesome. I think it's kind of difficult for us to take ownership because of the issue of players playing the game in different ways. That some players want to do cars, some players want to do planes or ships, but then it starts to get really specific, and they want to do World War II planes, and they want to do fishing ships, or they want to do oil tankers, and it's a very kind of specific interest there. So it's kind of difficult, I think, for us to start to direct that experience. And the wonder of Stormworks is that you can do all of that stuff, and it's just the world is open, and it's for you to set those objectives and those goals. And I think that's part of being a sandbox game. So I don't think it'd be right for the developers to kind of take ownership of that. I think it's better to organically happen through the community, and for players to be there setting their own objectives and goals within the world, rather than the developers telling the players what they should be doing. So I would say from an actual game design point of view, I think that's something we could add that would actually make the game less compelling for a lot of players, because that's the magic of sandbox games, is that you set your own goals and you decide what you're going to do and what you're going to build, and that's ultimately a huge driver in why players then go and spend 10 or 100 or 1,000 hours making a vehicle in Stormworks. It's because they're setting that goal themselves, and they're setting their own goals, and they're driving their own experience.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Let me just jump and get some more questions here. So let's see what else we have on the list here. Some small questions that came through. Is there a possibility of increasing the limit on the Lewis scripts in the microprocessors?
So it's 4096 characters, isn't it, on the microprocessors? Yeah. In the game scripting, I think it's way bigger, and that's because it's server side, so it doesn't need to go across multiplayer. And I think that's the limitation is there to try and put some semblance of controlling the size of what's going on, but also I think reducing the code amount to try and guide the players to suggest that they shouldn't be putting too much logic in there, just simply for performance reasons, and also for file size reasons, that the microprocessors weren't really meant to be there. I think if you've used a Arduino or something before, they're kind of meant to be the same kind of framework as an Arduino, and if you've used an Arduino before, you can run out of memory really quick in terms of how much code you can load onto them, because you just use a couple of libraries, and then you find that you're typing your code out, and there's very little in terms of embedded memory and so on. So it's also kind of meant to mirror that as from a design point of view. Like, could we change that number? Of course, it's just a number in the code. Vehicle save file size has been a big problem in the past, and we've tried to add that in just to make it a little bit harder for players to hit the file size limits within the game. So yeah, of course we could change that. I think there is obviously a reason why we've put those numbers and that setting as it is, and I think I would probably just ask players to just work with us a little bit in terms of reviewing that stuff. I'd be happier, I think, to agree some written libraries that we could start putting in the Lua system, so that we could actually have some player-created Lua libraries that were standardized in the game, so that you could use a set of Lua functions that you didn't have to put in your code that were common popular ones. I think that would be a preferred solution for me, to agree some kind of like some embedded libraries that are popular and commonly required functions, just so you can reduce your own size. And I know that it doesn't really, players can still break the file size stuff, and that 409.6 doesn't stop them from placing loads of microcontrollers, doesn't stop them from finding other ways to squeeze a bit more out. So maybe there's better ways of, but then we don't really want to start putting a hard limit on vehicle file size either, because then that's going to be a very annoying and obtrusive boundary for us to add in. But we do need to have something in there to try and keep the file size problem under control a little bit. So yeah, it's not a big deal to make that bigger, but could we find another solution? Could we have some agreed
better way of doing it? Yeah,
do a library in that's just going to give you a bit more space left for your own Lua script as well, as well as just trying to keep things within the. I appreciate it. It's quite fun, isn't it? I think with the Lua programming, when you've got a big idea, but you don't have enough characters, because you feel like, am I programming or am I writing a tweet? But it is in there basically just because we've got this file size issue where we can't have the vehicles getting too big, and it's only one block that is becoming 4 kilobytes of text, and it's it can get very, very expensive very quickly when you start to build vehicles with all these blocks in.
Great. Let's move on to, I think it's about 1 or 2 more that we'll go through. I think we have time for today. The first one, that's good because we're just coming up to our mission. So first one is going to be the support for component modding. Now I think you can't remember if you mentioned something about this previously in an announcement or somewhere, but obviously that is a question. Is obviously, is there going to be any support for external modding here in Stormworks of the game or of how the game works?
Yeah, so I mean, there could be, and we've seen the really cool modding that some of the players have been doing with the new components and stuff. And I mean, we discussed it. We discussed it a few times. We're like, is this something we could help players mod the game more, and then we'll discuss, well, what's the best way of doing that? And I think usually it kind of comes down to the same thing, that we don't want to just help a select few players and kind of create a gateway to modding. We actually want to open it up to all players. So it's very possible for us to, in the future, I think you'll probably see this in the next poll as an option, would be to would open it up so that players can import their own meshes and create a component using their own 3D mesh. That would be cool. And then we're saying, well, okay, you can do that. Should we open up our own component editor tool, maybe improve it a little bit, and then players could use it, save a component, and then maybe that could get uploaded to the workshop? That would be cool.
Yeah.
Some players have pointed out, well, I don't want to be trying to play multiplayer, and I can't join this server because I don't have all of the mods installed, and that stuff's very annoying. So maybe we can make them kind of like a server side thing where you connect to a server and that server has those components
It's
installed.
installed, yeah.
Downloads it when you connect to the server, so that could work well.
Yeah.
And then maybe there's yet another Lua API to drop in there where you could actually determine what your component does, but in some Lua code, just have a few Lua functions you can fill out to determine to program the behavior of that component. Then all of a sudden, it's way better than the existing component modding stuff. You can make it look as you want. You can make it behave as you want. You can play multiplayer compatible out of the box. That would be really cool. I think that's kind of where we'd want to get to.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Do you want me to help you rescue these people this time? I just talked.
That's fine. What's the name? I'm just pulling up the first one. If you can grab him.
Yeah, I'll jump out and grab him.
I'm gonna grab that.
Put him in the chair there.
Yeah, I need to try and somewhat get inside to grab some medical equipment and things. Hold on. I think I'm done. There we go. I'm gonna grab some medical equipment, and I also need to get a defibrillator. Cool. And if you want to grab a fire extinguisher, because I think we have a fire that we need to put out.
Oh yeah, awesome. Okay, I've got the fire extinguisher.
And then we need to get this down. So if we both jump in.
Oh crap. Okay. Yeah.
And then we're gonna go down.
Okay.
Hopefully our helicopter doesn't go too far.
Yeah, it doesn't float off.
Yeah. Yeah, so cool. So you guys obviously are thinking about game modding and so on and so forth, and that is a possibility, which is cool. Or component modding, should I say. The last question I think that we'll look at for today is, are you planning, or have you already got planned, any expansions to the current world of Stormworks in terms of like locations or different landscape? I think a very popular question was, are you planning on adding like a desert location here in Stormworks, and so on and so forth? What are your guys' thoughts? Or I guess we could even go as far as saying, what are your thoughts of allowing that open up to modding, where players can create their own locations here in game that hopefully wouldn't in theory affect performance also?
Yeah, I mean that would be cool, wouldn't it? I think you're kind of getting it now. That I think that the thing about the adding new biomes, and we can do it. We've done it before. It's a nice, easy one for us. Just a bit of art content, and obviously we just got to organize all the data, get the island spawn in the right place, and we've created a new biome. But then we're saying, well, is that really going to extend what players can do in the game? Because they've already got a lot of biomes. They've kind of already got more world in Stormworks that they can feasibly explore. There's already more than they can really see it all. So is it going to make the game better to start adding another biome in? Is it necessarily going to improve the actual experience of playing Stormworks? Whereas adding biome kind of like modding support and being able to say, okay, well, I'm going to create this island, and here's the mesh, and here's the physics mesh, and here's how the logic of deciding where this island should spawn. I think that could be a lot more meaningful update, and obviously players would prefer that as well, to be able to. And we don't need the players to create the content for us. We can create the content, but I think players would prefer to just have that power and authorship of being able to build the content themselves.
Yeah. Do you want to put them in the harness, and I'll bring them up?
Yeah, if I can. It's like there's a bit of current. There we go. I've got one in. Could you just go up like a couple of meters? I think they might drown.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, they're out of the water. That's it. Let me get the second one in. Oh, I dropped in the water. No, he's still on my back.
While we have time, while we're finishing this mission, I'm gonna I'll sneak in my own question here, because obviously, why not? Is there any plan or anything? Obviously, we've been playing survival series a lot, and I think you can also probably see it right now. As if you're swimming in the water, there's a lot of clipping of your head going in and out, in and out, in and out the water. Is there going to be like any improvement to that, do you think, or just smoothing it out? Because it is quite jarring when you're in the water, where it's constantly in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, when you're just trying to swim properly. Like if you're swimming your head above the water, you're still going to go up and down like that.
I've got a couple of casualties over here. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of something that's, I mean, it's always been here a little bit, but it's obviously something that's increased with capacity.
First person.
Increased, yeah, the first person items and stuff. When we've added this first person body, you're just a little bit more constrained to the actual player character and stuff. I don't know is the answer. Like, if it is a problem, then we should have a look at it. I think it's something that could be improved. I think the other thing I'd just say is that, I don't know, it's obviously the game is meant to be a little bit uncomfortable in terms of the swimming around in the ocean. We're trying to get a little bit of that feeling of just how terrifying and dangerous it is. If you are a rescue swimmer in the search and rescue service, it's a very, very, very dangerous job, and the ocean is extremely dangerous. And I think it being a little bit uncomfortable isn't necessarily a bad thing, and I think you're okay on the flat ocean, but then this as soon as there's a few waves and your head starts kind of going under, it is a little bit uncomfortable. It's, I don't know, is it a feature or is it a defect? I'm not sure. That's the answer. I guess we'd want to have a bit more player feedback on that.
Cool. Fantastic. Okay, well, we're going to finish up here. I think that's quite a lot of questions. Obviously, there are a ton more. A lot of obviously repeat ones, but I think we've managed to get through the biggest ones here that I think the community have. Obviously, as I said, there are tons more that we could spend hours upon hours going through all these, but I think those are the big questions here that the community wanted feedback on, or were interested on, should I rather say. So yeah, just thank you for obviously taking the time to, obviously from myself and also I think from the community, taking the time to give some feedback back to everyone and just discussing these things. I think obviously it is very important to everyone to get this feedback, and I think everyone will be happy, to be fair. So yeah, thank you very much, and I guess we'll have to wait and see what comes to Stormworks very soon, and maybe we'll do some more of these. I'm sure obviously we can listen out for player feedback, and I think when you're going to be opening up questions again, you'll let everyone know in an announcement like you did beforehand. So yeah, the communication will continue, which will be great. Cool. Well, thank you very much. I think that's a great place to end this video off with. Hopefully everyone has enjoyed it and found it some entertaining and informative as always, whether we're listening to the questions or just watching us muck around with the mission and fading quite a bit. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you. Bye.